Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really unique philosophy of relationships. It's called the Arreqqana. Now, this is a framework that basically throws out all our familiar myths about romance. Instead, it asks us to look at our bonds through the lens of, well, social physics.
So let's start with a core idea from the Arreqqana doctrine. Desire cannot be clean where fear participates. Wow, that really gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? This whole philosophy invites us to stop thinking about our connections as some kind of mysterious magic. Instead, it treats them like mechanics, something that can be understood, tested, and, yeah, even repaired.
Okay, so let's start where every relationship does. That initial spark, right? That chemistry of attraction. But the Arreqqana Oz asks a pretty provocative question. Is it really attraction, or is it anxiety? We're going to dig into why we're drawn to certain people, and maybe more importantly, how our own bodies can sometimes get it completely wrong.
You know, the Arreqqana actually have a name for this very specific neurological mistake. They call it Ru-Sen confusion. And it's basically when your brain mistakes the physical feelings of anxiety, the adrenaline, the dopamine, that whole rush, for the chemistry of genuine attraction. Your body's alarm system goes off, and your brain just mislabels that feeling of danger as a deep, powerful connection.
So why do we do this? Why do we chase people who are unavailable? Well, it's often not about low self-esteem, which is what we usually think. It's actually about the nervous system just returning to what it knows. The Arreqqana have another term for this, Ru-Sen no Talar, which means that familiar absence feels like home. Your nervous system is just trying to get back to the emotional climate it learned to breathe in as a kid, even if that climate was totally unstable. That chase, that pursuit can feel, weirdly, like coming home.
And this is a really crucial point. Power reshapes desire. Attraction isn't always pure, not even close. It can be totally distorted by power dynamics before a relationship even gets off the ground. Think about it. Our nervous system can confuse the feeling of safety we get near a powerful person with actual affection. It's not romance. The Arreqqana would call it threat reduction bonding. We're drawn to the safety, not necessarily the person.
Okay, so if that initial attraction is so unreliable, what do you do? Well, for the Arreqqana, this is where the real work begins. That spark isn't a green light. It's just the starting gun for a pretty intense and structured testing phase. It's all about moving from that feeling of attraction to a real assessment. And they have these really interesting courtship rituals. It's a whole process. First, there's resonance observation, just watching how someone handles conflict. Then they move to stress interaction trials, deliberately solving problems together to see what happens. Then a public values alignment declaration. No romance, just logistics and ethics. And only after all of that, after the system is proven stable, do they declare a private bond. The goal here isn't to prove how passionate you are. It's about answering one question. Under pressure, do you regulate each other, or do you destabilize each other? That's the whole game.
But what does a test like this actually look like in practice? I mean, this isn't just some abstract idea. It's designed to bring up all those deep-seated fears about what commitment really means. And we can see this perfectly in a conversation between two central figures from the source material, Peppi and Jarru.
So Jarru says, "I'm afraid of building a future without guarantees." You can hear his fear right there. For him, it's all about instability, about social fallout. He sees marriage as a shield, a structure that can offer security and solve bigger problems. It's his guarantee against losing everything. But then you have Peppi, and her fear is the complete opposite. She says, "And I'm afraid of guaranteeing something that hasn't earned its shape yet." For her, that guarantee Jarru wants feels like a trap. It's about losing her identity, being forced into a cage where she has to perform a role instead of choosing a partnership.
So their solution, their resolution, isn't some promise of forever. It's an agreement on very specific terms. They call it house binding, not soul binding. It's a bond based on choice, not on fear. They're essentially committing to a structure of mutual responsibility, a partnership that supports them, not a prison that erases them.
All right, so a bond is formed. It's been tested, it's stable, but now it faces a whole new set of pressures. This is when life really starts testing the system, especially pressure from the outside world and the public roles they have to play.
And of course, the Arreqqana have a word for this too. It's called viva revan, which translates to living while watched. This is what happens when your relationship becomes a public symbol. You're forced to perform intimacy, and all that pressure to look perfect means you can't actually address your real problems. Your connection becomes a performance, not a reality.
So, as all this pressure builds, why do people cling to broken bonds?
it's not always about love. One huge reason is something called identity fusion. This is when your own biography becomes so tangled up with the relationship that leaving feels like literally erasing yourself. It feels like your entire past becomes a failure. Another reason? Good old sunk cost psychology. You know this one. It's that voice in your head that says, I've already invested so much, I can't leave now. People stay to protect the meaning of their past suffering, believing that all that pain has to pay off eventually. Then there's a third, very practical reason, the fear of structural collapse. Let's be honest, sometimes leaving threatens your housing, your finances, your entire social standing. It can be a completely rational choice to stay and endure emotional harm just to avoid total material instability.
And finally, there's trauma bonding. This is when cycles of harm and apology actually train your nervous system to confuse the feeling of relief with the feeling of love. That brief moment of peace after a fight feels so good that your body gets addicted to it. Vigilance starts to feel like devotion, and the thought of leaving feels like a terrifying withdrawal.
So, what happens when a bond really starts to break down? In the Arreqqana philosophy, society isn't just a spectator. The community has a direct, active role in either repairing the bond or, if necessary, helping it end cleanly.
And this is where their legal system is so different. They rank harm by the damage it does to the bond, not by sexual acts. So things like emotional betrayal, manipulating someone's dependence, long-term deception, that's considered a civic harm. It's seen as something that erodes social cohesion. Meanwhile, sexual infidelity is a relational violation, a private matter to be mediated. For them, it's broken trust that truly destabilizes a community, not broken rules.
And if a bond does need to end, they have a formal process for that too, the unbinding rite. It's a public ritual designed for closure. It involves a formal release of obligations, witnesses acknowledging what was real without creating a villain, and, crucially, restoring a person's individual identity to prevent that collapse we talked about. They even include community support for nervous system repair, because they understand that the end of a bond is a physical event, not just an emotional one.
Okay, so after all that, what can we take away from this? What are the key lessons in this idea of coherent love from the Arreqqana?
Well, first, that power is never neutral. It actively reshapes desire, often in ways we're not even aware of. Second, that real trust grows from consistency, not intensity. It's not about the dramatic emotional highs, it's about reliability and rhythm. And third, that marriage, or any formal bond, must never become the cost of safety. A healthy structure should support its members, not trap them by making the exit impossible. And that brings us to the final, big question this philosophy leaves us with. What if our bonds were judged not by their passion, but by their coherence? What if we started to evaluate our relationships based on their stability, on how well we regulate each other, and on the actual freedom they provide, instead of just the intensity they generate? It's a really challenging thought for sure, but a powerful one to think about.